All right, good evening everyone. We're going to get started. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. It's so fantastic to have so many of you here with us in person, and also so fantastic to have so many of you joining us online via the live stream as well. I would like to formally welcome you all to the Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences Medicine Information Session. My name is Sasha Champion. I'm a Student Recruitment Coordinator in the Domestic Recruitment Team here at the University, and it is my absolute pleasure to be your host for this evening. Before I go any further, I would like to do a formal acknowledgement of country to acknowledge and pay my respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. Now, before I go any further, I would like to just do some quick housekeeping. If you do need the bathroom at any point tonight, they can be found through the doors down the front here and just to the left. I'd also just like to point out a few of our key academic staff in the Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences, particularly relevant to the medicine program. So we have, I'll just introduce you to them all. We have Professor Ben Canny, who is the Director of Medical Education here at the University, and we are actually lucky enough to be joined by Professor Canny tonight, who will jump up in a moment and help present some of the information and some of the content to you. We also have Professor Danny Liu, who is the Head of School and the Dean of Medicine, and also Dr. Andrea Dillon, who is the Program Director of the Medicine Program for Years 1 to 3. So the way that tonight is going to work is we will present a formal sort of presentation to you and go through the content, after which we will have a Q&A session. So we will have some members who will sit on a panel, and if you have a question that you would like to ask any of our panel members, you simply can pop up your hand and a microphone will make its way to you. So sitting on the panel tonight, myself, again, like I said, we have Professor Ben Canny with us as well. We're also really lucky to be joined by two current students who are currently in the medicine program. So we have Alani Cox and we have Cooper McDonald with us as well. So again, thank you so much for joining us to you both. I'm now going to hand over to Professor Canny, who's going to take you through the medicine program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sasha, and I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we meet, the Kaurna people, pay my respects to elders past and present, acknowledge their contribution to the ongoing health of the lands, the water and the sky and the peoples within, and that also to acknowledge that these lands are unceded. So what I'm going to go through tonight is just a little bit about the way the course is structured, and then Sasha will be able to tell you about how to get in and things along those lines. So the University of Adelaide last year started a new medical program. It remains a 6-year medical program focused upon school leaver entry, and at the end of that program, students graduate with an extended master's degree at what's called the AQF, or the Australian Qualifications 9 level. And the way you get into that program is you get admitted from first year, and if you successfully pass all the way through, you do a Bachelor of Medical Studies to start with, and then progress to a Doctor of Medicine after that, and it's an automatic transition through. And I can talk further about the rationale behind the program later if you wish. So why do it and why study? Well, the principal reason is the obvious one, because you want to practice as a medical practitioner. But the sorts of things we think is really distinctive about the opportunities is that it's learning, within South Australia's premier health education precinct. So if we take that western end of northern side of North Terrace, there's a whole conglomeration of buildings there that do fantastic education, fantastic science and fantastic healthcare. We're lucky enough to have the people that are involved in the course are often practicing clinicians who are national and world leaders. we utilise the best health simulation facility within Australasia, and the curriculum is based on looking at things from a real world scenarios and using global perspectives. There's lots of clinical placements opportunities available to students in a whole variety of clinical environments, including the ability to do some practice in rural placement in 5th year. And with the introduction of the MD project, there will be a substantial research scholarship project that all students will undertake in their final year. So, and there's also some other features. We're lucky enough across the road on Frome Road in what was the old medical school, the medical school that I went to many years ago, the Ray Last laboratories, where there's a whole range of anatomical capabilities there. And we still think learning from anatomy from the use of cadavers and the like is a very important model for students to be able to learn. And where I spend most of my time is down the road, down North Terrace in the what's called the Adelaide Health and Medical Sciences building. It's a large building of 12 stories, as you can see. It contains a whole series of different institutes and schools, including the Adelaide Medical School. And down there, students have the opportunity to learn in an environment where they're learning side by side with lots of researchers and lots of laboratories and lots of students. And many of those researchers are situated there because they don't mind walking the 250 metres down the road to the Royal Adelaide Hospital where they might be having clinical responsibilities. So there's that opportunity there. Probably worth talking about Adelaide Health Simulation. It's the only Australian simulation facility accredited with the Society for Simulation in Healthcare for Excellence in Learning and Teaching, okay? And that's a highly significant attribute that it has. Simulation is a really, really important learning modality. It allows everybody, be they from the beginning students through to the most senior of doctors, to train in atmospheres where they are able to train in high fidelity environments where mannequins and the like reproduce what happens with real patients and the like. They learn about how to do things in the correct way, what happens when you make mistakes, and importantly, how people and teams can work together. So it's a really incredible facility, and it's a real jewel in the crown of what we had here at the faculty. It also provides an opportunity for students to interact with students from other disciplines as they learn teamwork and the like. So just a brief view of what's involved in the course. So the course is really, although the program, the first 3 years are called the Bachelor of Medical Studies, and what happens here is this is the first pass through the body, really, learning the basics of not only the science and scholarship behind medicine, but also the other important things like how medicine interacts with health and society, what's involved in professionalism and leadership, and finally the critical development of foundation clinical skills, which you can then translate into using with real patients later on. In the first 2 years, there's lots of work done in the lecture theatre, in laboratories, but also in simulation and the like and so forth. And both Cooper and Aileen would be looking forward to next year because they're going to be involved in undertaking their first real clinical attachments. And as you can see from the words up here, we work our way through all the major body systems, and so students learn those fundamentals. And then what happens is the training in the Doctor of Medicine. It really is a clinical training with those important elements of the curriculum that I talked about before being repeated, but in a clinical environment. 4th year, it's a concentration on hospital-based medicine, particularly medicine and surgery and some other important disciplines there. In 5th year, there's one about 45 students, that's about a third of the class, have the opportunity to spend a year outside of Adelaide working with the Adelaide Rural Clinical School in a placement there, and women's health, children's health, and a range of other special modalities are learned. And in the final year, it's really about getting ready to graduate from the university with that Doctor of Medicine, being ready to operate as an intern. In addition to these professional activities, students will undertake a time undertaking research and scholarship. And just a little bit about placements. So placements, there's a lot of placements across the course, about 110 weeks, so that's about 3 full years in clinical placements. The vast majority of those placements are held in the large teaching hospitals the university uses. Of course, there's lots of rural placements as well. But what we're really putting a major effort into the moment is to recognising the importance of community placements, be they in general practice or other community settings. So a feature of the curriculum as it rolls out will be enhanced community placements, remembering of course that the vast majority of medicine is delivered in such an environment. And that's me done, is it? Or do I want to talk about this? You want me to talk about this one? Or you do? All right, I keep going. All right, fine. Okay, so those of you who have looked ahead and looked at the SATAC application forms and so forth will know that there are things called bonded medical places and non-bonded medical places. And these were introduced about 40 years ago almost, okay? And what they do is they say the government in funding places have some places that are non-bonded, and when things are non-bonded, that means that you can practice on graduation in anywhere that you want to across Australia and in any environment. Bonded medical places means that when you accept the place, you undertake a contract with the government, and that's a contract to undertake work in an area of workforce shortage after completing professional training. Now, what does that mean? Well, there's lots of places of workforce shortage in Australia. So a good colleague of mine has been a general practitioner at Chandler's Hill, so which is not too far away from the city. And he was a bonded medical student because he's a general practitioner, and that is an area of need. There might be other areas where your bonding means that you need to work in rural environments. So it's really important that you're aware of these two forms of getting in. There is a complex contract that sits behind accepting that. So my advice when dealing with a contract is get advice before you sign a contract. That's what I always do, and look carefully into things. And the important things is you're able to list both non-bonded and bonded medical program in your SATAC application. That will take two preferences, but there's still a lot more available to you. And career opportunities. You can do lots and lots of things as a doctor. There are very, very many career opportunities for a doctor. I'm a registered medical practitioner. I do not undertake clinical work. I undertake research and education, and I maintain a full registration. And I've had an incredible career and a really enjoyable career. But there's all sorts of different ways that you can contribute to health and to our community with what I think is a really incredible degree and a wonderful training in human biology, human sociology, and intervening to be able to be of assistance to people. So, and just a little bit to be done here to sort of specify exactly how things work. So, the university is responsible for getting you in, getting you through the first 3 years of the Bachelor Medical Studies, and then you transfer across into the Doctor of Medicine, an absolutely seamless activity. You don't have to do anything extra, no new application, no new admission, all very, very straightforward. And at the end of that, the university writes off to the Medical Board of Australia and says you're a fit and proper person to be granted provisional registration as a medical practitioner. So provisional registration, there's, and this slide is going to be out of date by next year, so that's a note for everyone to do. You do an internship at an approved hospital, and after 1 year you get eligible to apply for general registration with the Medical Board of Australia. The period of internship is a revision of that being undertaken in Australia at the moment, and it's going to be expanded out to 2 years. Exactly how that happens, we don't know. Full registration will still occur at the end of the first year. And then further specialist trainings are offered by the professional colleges. Now these professional colleges, their training can take anywhere from 4 to 10 years. So very, very long training after your initial graduation to become a specialist, even becoming a specialist general practitioner. That will take about a 5 or 6 year period. Really important point is that's where the university is responsible for. Okay, we work very, very closely with both the health services and the professional colleges to make sure this occurs as seamlessly as possible, but the university does not have responsibility for the bits below this line here. So while I can answer general questions about that, it's not a matter of university responsibility. And that does me. So over the session now. Thank you, and I look forward to questions later.
Thank you so much. I'll take the clicker. You can, you can keep that. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Ben. Appreciate your time and appreciate that overview. What I'm going to do now is dive into more of the meaty stuff. So we're going to go through the admissions information, the admissions process, key things to be aware of as an applicant. So just starting off with some of the key components in the table here. So as you can see, with our medicine program, the Bachelor of Medical Studies and the Doctor of Medicine, we intake once at the start of every year in February. In terms of academic scores, there is a minimum academic score that you need to be working towards, regardless of whether you are seen as a domestic student, a domestic applicant, or an international student as an international applicant. The required minimum scores, as you can see, are the same. So if you are working towards an ATAR in Year 12, you will need to achieve an ATAR score of 90 or above in order to be eligible, in order to have your application progressed. If you're working towards your International Baccalaureate or your IB, you need to achieve a score of a 34 or above. So good things to keep in mind, obviously. If you are considered an international student or an international applicant, you need to also meet the English language standard requirements. And one of the ways that you can do that is through something called an IELTS test, which is an international English language standard test. If you do sit that, you will need to achieve a score of 7 or above. In that test. Duration, Ben already spoke a little bit about this and talked us through this, but you will spend 3 years of study in the first component of the program, the Bachelor of Medical Studies. Successfully completing that, you will move on to your next 3 years in the Doctor of Medicine. Adding them together gives you a grand total of 6 years of study at a full-time pace in the medicine program. Prerequisites, there are subject prerequisites to be aware of for our program. So you got to make sure that you are on the path to successfully completing these at school in Year 12. So for our program, key to be aware of, you need to have completed one subject from either chemistry, biology, or maths methods, and I'm going to go into that a little bit more detail in a moment. So this sort of timeline breaks down step by step the entry process or the application process for a domestic applicant. The timeline here, it sort of does follow the timeline for a Year 12 student. So your first sort of steps are towards the start of the year, and then we get right way through to the end of the year. I'm going to give you sort of an insight into how this looks as a whole, the application process as a whole, and then we are going to break down each step into even more detail and go through the specifics of each one as well. So again, prerequisite subjects, like I've already mentioned, one from either chemistry, biology, or maths methods. Just got to make sure that you are on the path to successfully complete those in Year 12. Academic score, again, already spoke about this a little bit, but something to keep in mind pretty much from day one in Year 12 to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to put yourself in the best position to meet that required academic score. The UCAT, so in Year 12, you also must register for and sit the UCAT. So we're coming up to more sort of towards the middle of Year 12 now. So the UCAT is a formal part of the application process. It is something that you have to do. You will register for and then choose to sit the UCAT. There is a period of time again towards the middle of the year, where you can choose sort of a UCAT test date to sit in that sort of period of time. And again, I'll talk about specific dates more in a moment. Once you've sat the UCAT, then when SATAC applications open, you can formally apply and express your interest and desire to study our medicine program. So you can jump onto SATAC, submit your application, and obviously making sure that the medicine program is somewhere in your preferences. Once you've done that, our SATAC applications will close. There is a closing date. And at that point, we sort of step back and we look at all of the applicants, the quality of the applicants, and then we determine who is eligible for an interview, which is the next step in the application process. So we determine that. We will notify successful applicants who have been given an interview. And then the next step is obviously for the applicants to sit the interview. And again, we're approaching towards the end of the year now. So you'll sit your interview. Once you've done that, we again step back again and we look at sort of at that point, right towards the end of the year, we have everything that we need in order to determine who ultimately is given an offer. So let's break it down even further. I know there's a lot of steps, but a lot of key information to note at all of these key points. So prerequisite subjects, again, this is really something that you need to be aware of, like I said, before you get to year 12. So if you are currently in year 10 or year 11, just making sure that you are aware of what you need to do. Perhaps for chemistry, for example, perhaps you need to take chemistry in year 10 and in year 11 to be able to do it in year 12. So again, just making sure that you are on the right pathway, and just noting as well that we do only require one out of those 3 subjects. So you don't need to do all 3, just making sure that you've satisfied one from that group of subjects. Academic score, again, something that you need to be aware of, something that you need to be working towards throughout the whole of year 12, trying to make yourself as competitive as possible. So if you're working towards an ATAR, again, your ATAR score, your overall score will need to be at a 90 or above. Just noting there that that score is including any applicable adjustment factors that you're eligible for. So overall encompassing that, your score will need to be at a 90 or above. If you're not aware, if you don't know what an adjustment factor is, it is possible for you to get extra points awarded to you to your overall academic score when you're in year 12. And there are 2 different categories of these adjustment factors, or different point categories. One is called subject-based points. That's based on if you choose to study certain subjects in year 12, you can be awarded extra points for those subjects that you've studied. The other category is called equity-based points, and that's more based on your personal circumstances. Really important to note that when you're applying to our medicine program, we only consider equity-based points. We will not look at subject-based points. If you are eligible for them, that's fantastic, but they won't apply to your medicine application. Really, really important to be aware of that. If you're, again, working towards your international baccalaureate, again, same thing, you need making sure that you're working towards the minimum score of 34 or above. UCAT, again, so like I said, UCAT is a formal part of the process. Every applicant will have to do it. The only exception is if you qualify for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander applicant pathway. But if not, if that doesn't apply to you, you will have to register for the UCAT, you will have to sit to the UCAT. And like I said, you do have a little bit of flexibility and control in terms of when you sit the UCAT in year 12. So the UCAT period this year, the formal sort of testing period is from the 3rd of July through to the 11th of August. So again, just making sure that you've registered for it and you're prepared to sit that in year 12. Once you've done that, again, like I mentioned, it's SATAC application time. So SATAC applications will open, you'll jump in, complete all the relevant information that you need to, listing the medicine program in your preferences. So as you heard Ben go through, we do have a bonded medical program, so students on a bonded place, and then a non-bonded program, students on a non-bonded place, and they are, as you can see, listed as 2 separate SATAC codes. So if you are in year 12, you will probably know very well how sort of SATAC works, or you're coming to learn how SATAC works and how preferencing works. So when you do your SATAC application, you're given 6 spots, basically space for you to list 6 different degrees that you are interested in studying at university. And as you can see, because they are listed as 2 separate SATAC codes, that means that they have to be listed as 2 separate preferences. So if you're interested in applying for the non-bonded program and the bonded program, which obviously a lot of students will do, it will take up 2 out of your 6 preferences. So just something, again, to keep in mind when you're figuring out what your preferences look like. So once you've done that, again, SATEC applications will close. We will assess everybody's applications, we'll assess the quality of them, and then we will determine who will be given an interview. So ultimately, your UCAT score is what determines whether you will be given an interview. So that's what we look at to determine who will go through. And you will be notified if you are successful. You'll be notified on the outcome of your interview eligibility via email, and it will be sent to the same email address that you submit, that you list on your SATEC application. As you can see, around Tuesday the 24th of October, so it is really in that later part of the year, that is when the emails will be sent out, notifying you whether you've got an interview or not. So note that date down, make sure you're on your emails, whatever email address that you list on your SATEC application, making sure that you are aware of that, checking your emails for that outcome. And again, next step, obviously, sitting the interview. So as you can see, we will take through an interview approximately, give or take, 600 applicants in the interview process. There is one interview round. And as you can see, it is this year for the 2024 intake to be sort of from late November into December, right at the end of the year. Generally, it's scheduled after final exams in Year 12. And it's also important to note, as you can see as well, that for the 2024 intake, all of our interviews will be conducted online via video conferencing. So just important to keep that in mind. Once we've done interviews, again, at that point, we're right at the end of the year in December, we will have access to everything that we need. So we will look at your UCAT score, we will look at your performance in the interview, and we will look at your overall academic score. And at this point, we assign a different weighting to each of these things, again, to determine who ultimately gets a place. So as you can see, your UCAT results are weighted at 20%, your performance in the interview is weighted at 40%, and your overall academic score, whether that be ATAR or IB, is weighted at the other 40%. And again, you'll be notified via SATAC whether you have been made an offer. In the offer rounds, generally it starts around December. But we'll go through, again, specific dates now. So this is really key, really important to be aware of, particularly if you are in Year 12 now. It can also serve as a good guide if you're maybe not in Year 12, just things, sort of points in the year to be aware of. So obviously, as we're in May right now, the next date that is most relevant to you all is actually this Wednesday, the 17th of May, which is tomorrow. That is the UCAT registration closing date. So if you are in Year 12, you are interested in sitting the UCAT this year, you haven't registered for it, let that be the first thing that you do when you go home. Jump online, register for the UCAT, register to sit it, because as you can see, registrations will close as of tomorrow. There are a couple of other late applicant deadlines, but late fees do apply for that. So if you want to avoid that, make sure that you complete that registration for the UCAT by tomorrow. The UCAT testing period from the 3rd of July through to the 11th of August. And again, you can sort of select a couple of dates that you can choose from, depending on what suits your schedule best, depending on when you want to sit the UCAT. Monday the 7th of August. So that's when, for this year, SATEC applications will formally open. So that's from that point, you can jump in and again, complete that SATEC application. The next really important date to be aware of is Friday the 29th of September. So that is when SATEC applications will close for the medicine program. So we have a hard closure date. That date cannot be moved. Given the medicine program is a non-standard admissions process, there's extra things that that you have to do as an applicant and extra things that we have to assess. We bring forward the closing date to the 29th of September. So please make sure that you have applied to SATEC by that date and paid for your SATEC application by that date as well. If you try and jump in the 30th of September, 1st of October, whatever it is, you will unfortunately not be able to apply for the medicine program. So please take note of that date. Then again, about a month later, the 24th of October, you'll receive that email indicating the outcome of your interview eligibility. You'll be given the ability to book in your interview if you are successful. Interviews will be held in that sort of late November to early December period, right towards the end of the year, and then the offer round sort of from December 2023, at the end of this year. So I know that was a lot of information in quite a short space of time. But the good news is everything that I just blurted out at you is written down for you in a really, really easy place for you to access. So this is our medicine admissions guide. The Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences sort of create this and update this every single year. This is your one-stop shop for everything that you need to do about the medicine admissions process. So as you can see, it talks about everything that I just covered and more. There is a lot of information in this document. So best thing to do is scan that QR code up on the screen, head to the website up on the slide, or simply go to our website when you get home. In the search bar, search for the Medicine Admissions Guide and it will pop up. Again, it's a really good document to refer back to, even if you're not in year 12, in year 10 or year 11 or whatever it is, referring back to that document at multiple points throughout the rest of your education, just to make sure that you are aware of everything that you need. If for whatever reason anything changes as well, this is the first place that it's going to be updated. So a bit of bedtime reading for you all tonight. Go home, highly recommend going through this, making sure that you're aware of everything that you need to know. The last thing that I'm going to talk about before we move into our Q&A session is Open Day. So Open Day this year will be held on Sunday the 13th of August. We are opening up this campus, the North Terrace campus, but we are also opening up our Adelaide Health and Medical Sciences building, which is a bit further down North Terrace near the Royal Adelaide Hospital. And we haven't done that in quite a long time, I believe since before the pandemic. So very excited to be able to open both of those spaces and to have people in those spaces. If you are not already considering it, I highly recommend that you do come to Open Day. Being given access to the Adelaide Health and Medical Sciences building, particularly as a prospective sort of medicine student, that is a building that you will spend a lot of your time. And again, as you heard, some really incredible facilities in that space. So highly recommend you come along. Open Day is a really great way to chat to current students about their pathway and sort of how they find the program. You can meet and chat to academics that will eventually go on to be your teachers in the program. It's a really great way for you to visualise what your life might be like at the University of Adelaide as a University of Adelaide student. So mark that date down for sure. If you do register to attend Open Day as well, as you can see, you will go in the chance to win one of a $1,000 gift card, which is a pretty cool incentive as well. All right. What I would like to do now is invite our panelists, our panel members up to join me up on the stage, take a seat next to me as they are making their way up. What I will say, just to preface this Q&A session with, we're going to answer general sort of admissions queries that you might have, general queries that you might have about the program, placements, the structure, anything like that, that you might want to know. If you have any more specific questions that relate to maybe you more personally, your personal circumstances, what I recommend that you do is actually get in touch with our Future Student Inquiries team, so they can be contacted just via the website up on the screen, via the email address there. And again, if you go to our website in the search bar, search Future Student Inquiries team, you'll find a way to contact them. That's probably the best place to direct those questions. Otherwise, the way that I thought we might start this Q&A session is actually, I wanted to pose a question to you, Alani, and to you, Cooper, as our current medicine students going through the program. I know, Alani, you actually had more of a unique pathway into the medicine program, and Cooper, maybe yours was more of the standard pathway that I sort of mostly spoke about then. So I'm just wondering if you might be able to share just sort of the differences and maybe how your experience, why you perhaps chose to pursue that sort of pathway, particularly you, Alani, and sort of, what your overall experience getting into the program.
Great. Yeah, I applied, like most of you will, straight out of year 12. Unfortunately, I didn't get a position, which was obviously very devastating, but I kind of decided that we were just coming out of COVID, taking a gap year and travelling wasn't necessarily an option, and I didn't really want to take time off study. So I decided to start the Advanced Health and Med Science degree. Like a lot of people doing the degree, I was trying to do an internal transfer into the Bachelor of Medicine. So I was obviously successful after a year, and I found that it was an incredibly helpful experience. I find that I'm quite ahead of my peers at this point, and I also kind of got a year to get used to uni. the course itself, the advanced course, is very much geared towards people wanting to do an internal transfer. So there's a lot of courses that we take that are kind of building those foundational skills, whether it be clinical skills, anatomy, that really do kind of translate over into at least this first semester that I'm doing. So that was my kind of pathway.
Mine was more the traditional way. So I got in straight out of year 12. And what I will say, it's as great as it is to get out of year 12, all the people that did your pathway definitely found the first semester and the first year and little bits here and there a lot easier than I did, because they've already covered pretty much the basics and they're just building on it now, whereas everyone straight out of year 12 is still covering the basics. So I don't think there's really an advantage or disadvantage to doing either, and I think once you get in, everyone's the same, and so actually the people who did your pathway has the advantage.
Yeah, interesting, really interesting. Thank you for sharing your experiences. If you do have a question that you would like to ask anyone of the panel members, just simply raise your hand and we will find a microphone to run to you. Otherwise, if there are no questions from the audience, I do have another question for both of you, Alani and Cooper. If you could simply describe perhaps what you think is the best sort of aspect so far that you've experienced so far of the program, what you love the most about sort of being in the program.
Yeah, so by far my favourite part is how kind of insulated the program is. Because you only take one subject, you are constantly surrounded by the same people. So obviously you get to form really great relationships with those same people. Similarly, the older years have, for the most part, been through the same thing, and there's a really good culture amongst the kind of cohort of like helping younger years, whether that be through mock OSCEs, putting on different extra tutorial sessions, or even a lot of different clubs that there is.
Yeah, definitely the Adelaide Medical Student Society is a really big highlight. They throw some great events. The older years are super helpful. I know I'm friends with quite a lot of older years, and it's always a nice way to sort of see where everything's progressing, where everyone's going, what's it actually like in hospital. I think at the moment my favourite parts of I'm in second year. So my favourite part is probably the clinical interactions and actually taking history from patients. We're doing an exam on patients. That's where I find I learn the most, and I think is for me the most interesting part, because you actually get to talk to someone. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you. Again, any questions? Just simply raise your hand. Yes, we have one in the middle here. We'll just get a microphone to you so we can all hear.
So just a question, sorry, I forgot your name. Did you go through the GAMSAT when transferring courses, or was it just from your GPA?
So the GAMSAT is something you sit if you want to go into postgraduate medicine. So basically the overall process transferring is pretty similar, trying to get in through year 12, however they just use your GPA instead of your ATAR.
Yeah, so I might jump in as well, just to build on what you said. So while, as Ben sort of mentioned, the way that we structure our program is in two different degrees, the Bachelor of Medical Studies and the Doctor of Medicine. The Doctor of Medicine is formally seen as a postgraduate degree, but while we have that postgraduate degree in our program, we don't offer postgrad med. So what that means is the pathway that Alana is talking about isn't through the GAMSAT. You can't actually, there is no way for you to do the GAMSAT with our program to get in. So the Doctor of Medicine isn't an entry point for us. We have one entry point that's at the start of the program, the first year of the Bachelor of Medical Studies. And if you get into the first year, we assume that you are in for the full 6 years. There is no GAMSAT that you have to do in between the Bachelor of Medical Studies and the Doctor of Medicine. The pathway that you're talking about, like you said, is more similar to just the standard year 12 entry. It's just that you did 1 year of a different degree first and then still had to go through the UCAT and the interview process as well. Great. Any other questions from the crowd. We have one over in the middle here, Nadine. Thank you so much, Sam.
Hi, thanks very much, Alani and Cooper and Professor. Quick one, what would you describe as some of the biggest challenges you've faced and how have you overcome them?
It's a fantastic question. Yeah. So far in your experience, whether that would be the application process or so far something that you face as a current student? That doesn't mean that you've got heaps of them that you're trying to ponder through.
Constant struggle.
Reflecting on my time as a student, but also reflecting as a practitioner and as an educator, I think the most challenging part of undertaking a medical degree there are two challenging things. One is intellectually there is a lot of juggling of different ideas that has to go on. So none of the ideas, to my mind, is all that complex, but there's lots of balls you've got to keep in the air intellectually at one time, be that from different areas of science or be that from thinking about the social or the personal aspects of things, as well as thinking about the medical aspects of things. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I think it's a real challenge to maintain what we now call work-life balance, sense of perspective, sense of connection with community and things along those lines. Remember that we come from a community and serve the community and need to keep those real connections going. They're the two things I look back on and say, that's what I want the students that I'm involved with helping to really grapple with. So there's a boring old man's comment, but I'll pass it on to the real people.
I don't know if you have anything to add, Cooper and Alani.
Yeah, I totally agree. Medicine feels like they're constantly throwing information at you and you just somehow have to catch it all. But I would say not necessarily a physical struggle, but maybe an internal struggle is that you're coming from high school where you're probably one of the best performers, and you maybe finding it quite easy to getting into an environment where everyone was that best of the best, and you are definitely no longer the best. And it definitely does knock you down a couple pegs. I don't think there's necessarily a culture of competitiveness, which is really great, but it's definitely an internal struggle.
Yeah, I agree. You get humbled quite quickly. But there is no, it's good. When you're in medicine, there's no competitiveness. Everyone's working together and helping each other, which is really, really nice. Whereas it wasn't really like that in year 12. I'd say probably my biggest struggle was that sort of UCAT, getting over that hurdle. But I don't think that is, obviously, everyone, you need to do the UCAT, but as long as you get there, that's really all that matters.
It's one part of the process that you just have to do and then you go on. Any other
I'll add one little thing. And thanks for reminding me of it. Your late teens, early 20s are a pretty tumultuous time of your life, and the program is quite demanding and life can get in the way. And so therefore we put a lot of effort into providing appropriate pastoral care to students so that they can overcome those hurdles and so forth. And I think the current financial states and so on and so forth makes life just a bit more complex than it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other? Oh, yeah. I'll go up the back first and then we'll come down here. So just the red jumper. Yep.
Just wondering, is there like a course for the UCAT, like how to practice what's in it and things like that? Is there something like that is readily accessible?
I might jump in first, and as students that have sat the UCAT, any sort of experiences that you want to share. But what I would say is there are courses out there that are offered that can offer you preparation for the UCAT. The key thing that I want to stress is that the University of Adelaide is in no way associated or affiliated with any of those preparation courses. I think one of, if not the best place to go as a starting point is the official UCAT website to get all the sort of information and get your head around sort of what the test is and what you need to be prepared for. There are a lot of preparation courses that will can say that they can offer you to get you to a certain point in the application process. We will guarantee you an interview at XYZ University. I just say to be aware of that because, like I said, we are in no way affiliated with them. So if they are guaranteeing you to get to a certain point, it's essentially not true. So yeah, just be cautious. Any personal decisions that you choose to make, anything that prepares you, that makes you feel more confident. Obviously, you're at your discretion, at your decision, but just be aware that we are formally not. We don't offer anything formally that's associated with us. I don't know if that summarises it.
The other comment, and I'll make this very carefully. There is no evidence that preparatory courses are of benefit. But we need to take care that it's a very, very difficult experiment to undertake, and there's a very fine line between evidence. A lack of evidence is the same as an evidence of lack. So you need to be caveat emptor, buyer beware.
I think well said.
I might just add to that. I have gone to a UCAT prep course. I don't know, there's like big companies that do it. There's also, students that run it, people who've sat up before. The more, if you are completely clueless and have no idea what you're doing, it's helpful and, it gives you some grips. But beyond that, I actually didn't find it was that great. I thought that the best thing I got out of it was seeing people every week who were still like consistently at that like top level, which then motivated me to keep working harder. That's what I found I got out of it more than the sort of UCAT tips and tricks.
Yeah, I'll just add something quickly. Similarly, I also did a couple of years of like in-person tutoring, and that was before I wasn't successful, and it probably would have been because of my UCAT that wasn't so great. The second time round, I found that the most helpful thing was just doing a lot of practice questions under timed conditions, and I would also like to note that it's very expensive, and I found that maybe the cheaper options were also better.
So again, starting with those free resources, perhaps the UCAT website is the best place. The official UCAT website is the best place to start. Thank you for those insights. There was a question, thank you, run all the way down to the front. So just in here, black shirt. Thank you.
All right, if you don't mind me asking, what's the average GPA you need to transfer internally?
What's the average
GPA you need to transfer internally?
So I'm going to jump on this one as well. So again, if you're looking at the internal applicant pathway, again, the first thing that I'll preface it with is there are certain terms and conditions around that pathway that you need to be aware of, and the best place to learn about that is the Medicine Admissions Guide. So the GPA, the score, it only applies to University of Adelaide higher education applicants. So students that are in alternate degrees, in Alani's case, the Bachelor of Health and Medical Sciences Advanced Program, alternate degrees at the University of Adelaide that are looking to internally transfer in. There is a same sort of process applies, a minimum academic score that you need to meet. It's a GPA of 5.0 or above. So if you don't know, GPA stands for grade point average. It's a score that summarises your performance across all of your assignments and marked exams and things that you do in all of your subjects across semesters at university. So a 5.0 or above is a score that you need to be working towards. Does that help?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Just the back in the middle. Thanks, Nadine.
Hi there. Sorry, I have two questions. The first one is, with the bonded medical program, what is the case with like whether you want to do a further degree? Would you still do your bonded program where you're put into a place?
So as in like your specialisations? I don't know if, Ben.
The answer to that is yes. The bonded medical place is associated with you get a thing called a provider number. So a provider number is the thing that doctors use to bill the government for Medicare related fees and the like and so forth. So therefore, if you've done a further degree, be it a further university-based degree, or you've done a college fellowship and so forth, when you get that provider number is when you need to do your service in an area of medical need. But just remember that that's a pretty broad area in Australia at the moment.
Okay,
Does that answer that question?
Yes, it does.
Good, thank you.
My second one is, you were saying to advance from the second to third year. Is that the bridge? That's the gap between the bachelor and the doctor, or the third and the fourth?
Third
and fourth, yeah.
Sorry. To like advance, you said you needed to like successfully complete. Is that like a approximate GPA that you have to achieve?
No, you just need to pass the
Okay.
courses.
Everything,
So everyone who passes the courses will be automatically admitted to the MD.
whatever standard part of the third and final year of that Bachelor of Medical Studies, you pass that, you go through.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All good. Good questions. Questions? Any others from the audience? Yep, fantastic. Down the front here in the middle. Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, let's say if you're trying to become like a surgeon or something in that type of course, what would you have to do after the 6 years of completing your doctor's bachelor?
That's a really good question.
A lot more work. So let me go through it. So what you would do is that you would do your internship, and then you get general registration, and then you would have jobs generally within a hospital-based setting, and you apply to get into the surgical training program. They have a selection process of their own. I don't know the full details of it, but there's all sorts of things that they contribute to it. And once you've got into the surgical training program, it's approximately 6 years before you become a fully qualified surgeon, with a number of large exams on the way through. I heard last night that the average number of years post-graduation to get into the surgical training program is about 4.5 to 5 years. So we're talking about a 10 or 11 year period post finishing your medical course to become a fully qualified surgeon. And there'll be certain branches of surgery which will take longer because they're more complex. It's a long road to hoe.
That does really touch on, I think, the commitment to lifelong learning that you need as a medicine student, as a medicine professional.
Can I just add something to that? I know that's quite scary. One thing that kind of calms your nerves a bit is that you are still getting paid while you're studying, which I think is quite important to note.
We have time perhaps for one more question from the audience. You found one for me, thank you.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, what's your best advice for, like, let's say students who are working but also wanting to apply for medicine?
Really good question.
I would say that working is a really great experience, and it makes you a better person, and a better person when it comes to the interview. You're going to be working for the rest of your life, and working, whether it be like a retail hospo job, is going to give you skills that are going to translate into your professional career, and they're really good things to bring up in the interview.
Yeah, I'm a very strong advocate of students working while they're studying or preparing for studying, in part because of those comments I made before about maintaining connections to community and the like and so forth. We do know, however, that working beyond about 12 hours a week starts to have negative effects upon academic performance. So getting that balance right is a real challenge. And I'm fully aware that for some people, the option of only doing part-time work at 12 hours a week is not feasible with them maintaining their families or their accommodation and the like and so forth. So just to be realistic as well as encouraging.
Any last thoughts to add? Give it a note. I think you summarised it really well.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I think working's great. It gives you good experiences. It also teaches you like a bit of discipline as well, which I think is quite important, especially for a 6-year degree.
I think a really, really good point. We are going to leave the Q&A there and formally wrap up the session. So I would like to once again thank Professor Benkani, Cooper and Alani for your time this evening and for those really fantastic responses and for sharing sort of your experiences. And I'd like to thank you all as well for joining us here this evening in person and online. We hope that you enjoyed the session and found it informative, and we wish you the best of luck in your journeys, and hopefully we'll see you on campus here at the University of Adelaide in some point in the future. So thank you so much. We're going to have about a 5-minute break now as we prepare for the dentistry and oral health session. Thank you so much.